What is up, Packers fans? Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. In just a moment, we're going to be joined by the wonderful Paul Bretl. Paul does such an amazing job covering the Packers, and I really love that he spends so much time in the locker room and gathering information. He's got all these quotes and anecdotes and everything else. We'll jump in today's conversation here in just a moment. But yeah, we kind of go over what we saw kind of from Packers Commanders, still kind of recapping that, but also getting ready for Packers Browns and just kind of some of the key takeaways for the first couple weeks of the season. So you're not going to want to miss that. Before we get there, again, reminder to support our partners. First of all, Alchemy Wealth Management, Ryan Nelson. Check him out over at retirewithryan.net. Specific landing page for Pack-A-Day listeners where you get a free retirement consultation, normally a $175 value directly through the site. It again is set up directly for us with Pack-A-Day, which is really, really cool. You can check it out again over at retirewithryan.net. The link is in the description below. Make sure to check that out. It is really cool for him to do this. And I think you're going to really enjoy your time with Ryan by setting up that consultation. Also, of course, Luigi's Frozen Pizzas. What are you waiting for? These things are beyond delicious. I love everyone in the comments telling me how they've tried Luigi's Frozen Pizzas for the first time and that they're absolutely loving them. People have asked me quite a bit of like, what do you recommend? What should you get for the first time? I think for the first time, the ultra thin crust is the one to go with. The reason being is I just think it's super easy. It cooks quick. You get that instant gratification. The sauce is amazing. The crispy crust is amazing. The toppings are incredible. The cheese is incredible. Get that. And then, I go with the fresh dough pizza immediately following that, but you can go in any order that you want. Try them all. They're all worth it. I've gone through pretty much every single one. There's still a couple ones, the new gourmet ones. I still have a few more to try, but I will get there. I promise you. Check them out over at luigispizza.com and on social media at Luigi's Pizza. Stock up on those victory pizzas all season long. And with that, let's get to our wonderful conversation with the great Paul Bretl. All right, and now we are being joined by the one and only Paul Bretl. You can find him in the Wisconsin State Journal, of course, on social media as well, at Paul_Bretl. Paul, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm excellent, Andy. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's always fun, and especially fun so far this season, as is usually appropriate, and as I usually do with our guests. I'm going to give you the floor first. The Packers are 2-0. Go in any direction. How are you feeling, Paul? And what are your key takeaways from this 2-0 start for Green Bay?
Yeah, so obviously I'm going to focus on the defensive side of the ball a little bit. We've seen, right, what the pass rush has been able to do, but I just kind of want to focus high level on the secondary and the play of that group, because we look at the performance against Jaden Daniels, that Washington offense. Obviously the pass rush, I think they had 12 quarterback hits in that game against Jaden Daniels. Yeah, an impressive stat, but there were also a number of plays where before the pass rush was quite there, where you could see Daniels getting to his third read, his fourth read. The passes that he did get off and complete, there were a lot of checkdowns, and that's a product of what's happening on the back end. And I think we talked about this over the summer, but one of I called it the secondary superpower this season, is the versatility of that group and the communication within that group, the comfort of being in Jeff Hafley's defense for a second season. Again, that's not just understanding everything that goes into your role, but it's understanding what the player next to you is doing. It's understanding, even though you might be the cornerback, how the pass rush is rushing on a certain play. And beyond that, all right, we're in this coverage, we're going to do this. Here's how the offense might want to respond. There's this deeper understanding of the system, the scheme that just comes with experience, right? Having a full season under your belt, a full off season, rather than a year ago at this time, you're implementing the defense. So from an understanding standpoint, an execution standpoint, players play faster, right? When you know what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to be, how offenses are going to attack you, you're going to play faster. We are absolutely seeing that. For Jeff Hafley's perspective, he can dive deeper into the playbook and ask more of these players, because I know it's obviously difficult to see on the TV copy, but when you're up in the press box or watching the all 22, I mean, the movement right now in the secondary, what the quarterback sees when he's under center versus what he sees when he's at the top of his drop, completely different. And again, causes hesitation, causes confusion. That's an extra half second, maybe a second for the pass rush to get home. Just creates so much chaos for the opposing offense. So Credit, of course, first and foremost goes to the players. Keshan Nixon, Nate Hobbs, McKinney, everyone on the back end. They are the ones out there making the plays, executing what's being called. As Jeff Hafley's talked about previously, and I think he said this in his first offseason here, and I love this. If I draw up the best blitz ever on paper, but we don't coach it properly, or we don't understand our players' strengths and weaknesses and put them in a position to play fast and go and execute, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you draw up. So it's on the players to go out there and execute, which they're doing. But also, a year into this Jeff Hafley defense, especially in the secondary, I feel like we're really starting to see just everything that's possible with the versatility that they have. And last thing I'll say, I mentioned this after the Packers win. We talk about year 2 leaps, right, for players all the time. But What about within offensive or defensive schemes? The 2019 Packers offense, year 1 under Matt LaFleur, versus the 2020 Packers offense in year 2 under Matt LaFleur, drastically different. And the win totals were the same or similar, but drastically different in terms of how effective those units were. It feels like we're seeing a year 2 leap from the defense. And I know, of course, Micah Parsons plays a big part of that. I'm not overlooking that. But in the secondary specifically, I think we're seeing a year 2 leap in the defense, the understanding, and the execution.
I feel very ripped off on my year 2 Rich Bisaccia special teams leap that never really came. I'm just kidding. I want to go back to the word that you used, fast, because I think when we think about fast, a lot of times we think of 4.340 and just guys from point A to point B, right? But I think you bring up a phenomenal point of when you look at this defense right now, it's fast in a variety of different ways. First of all, the players on this defense are fast as hell. They are 4.340 fast in a lot of different positions. Even Micah Parsons, a defensive end, is freaking 4.340 fast. So yes, you are seeing a very fast defense on the field flying to the football. But fast also comes with mental processing and being able to understand exactly where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to be doing, how other teammates are going to be reacting to certain things so you can play off of that, and being able to read your keys and diagnose things and then just go and fly to the football. And we've seen players in Green Bay. I think Darnell Savage was an example of a player of like when he was playing fast and we was playing kind of downhill and keen on things, he looked a lot better than when he was hesitant or maybe not exactly sure. I think Green Bay has a lot of like similar players in like Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker and some of these safeties defense. Like when they're able to just fly, Javon Bullard, I think, is another great example. When they're able to diagnose and fly around to the football, you really see the peak of their powers and what they're able to do. And to your point, it feels like they really have a unbelievable understanding of this defense, what everyone else is doing. They're communicating effectively. And because of that, it's not just like 4.340 fast, it's IQ fast, football fast. And then one thing on top of that as well is it just feels like Jeff Hafley is able to get these guys one tick ahead of what the other team is doing. It just feels like they either know what's coming or they know exactly how to respond to it, but just are well prepared for everything. And when you add in well prepared or a tick ahead of what the other team is already trying to do, and then add in the fact that you're causing insane confusion, which is putting you a tick ahead because it takes the quarterbacks that one extra tick to kind of figure out what the defense is actually doing, with the mental processing and the ability to diagnose everything, read your keys, etc. in this second year in the defense. And then, oh, by the way, yeah, they're also super fast. You get the feeling that everything is happening at warp speed on defense. And that's where it feels like, to me, they've got 14 defenders out on the field because there's just players flying around everywhere.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about this specifically last week because we talked with the coaches after we had recorded, but I wrote about the play style of this Packers team because Matt LaFleur had said after that Lions game that that's like the urgency from the defense. That's the best that he's seen in his tenure. Jeff Hafley, obviously a shorter tenure, but in the full year he's been with the Packers, that was the greatest sense of urgency that he had seen from that group and that play style. And when you're stressing play style, it's not just about making the big hit, right? It's about swarming to the ball carrier. Jeff Hafley talked about when you watch his film, he pauses the tape when the ball carrier is being tackled. How many of the 11 defenders can he see on the screen? He said, when you're seeing that, you're seeing hustle, you're seeing guys who are playing for each other, guys who love the game, guys who understand where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing. He said, you can tell a lot about your defense when you pause the tape when the ball carrier is being tackled. And when the Packers have done that over these first 2 games, they're seeing a lot of those guys around the ball carrier. And it's not, we can look at the reasoning, right? Like it's really easy to be amped up for week 1 home game against the Lions. Micah Parsons just arrived. Like those are all reasons. And they're sure to some degree was a factor as well. that additional energy. But this play style mentality, this started last season. Hafley said by the end of the season, he thought that this Packers defense was playing as hard as they had all season. Matt LaFleur talked about how this mentality is something that they have preached, emphasized all off season long. We've seen it with additions, Nate Hobbs, the offensive line getting bigger, more people movers up front. Like, this is who the Packers wanted to become this season. And we're seeing it, the early effects of it, but this has been a process, and something they've emphasized for months and months now. And we're starting to see the product of it on the field.
I don't even have words. I'm just excited. I'm so excited to see it, like how this team has been playing so far, and hopefully it continues to carry over. Their first road game, of course, coming up this week, and we'll see what that crowd is like. Of course, the crowd in Green Bay has really helped them as well, and just being able to cause that chaos when the other team is on offense. But yeah, this defense and this team and the mentality that they've been playing with, and it's really a credit to the organization, because it's one thing for Goody in that immediate press conference following the season to say we need urgency, and then to actually go out and have the urgency himself, but also to get that urgency from everyone on the team and that play style. We've heard from Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley, Brian Gutekunst, so they wanted this play style. We've heard about attention to detail from Matt LaFleur on the very first day, I think his very first press conference in training camp, of attention to detail was going to set them apart. Well, we haven't seen the pre-snap penalties, the drops, and those sort of things that have kind of plagued them in the past. And it's early, it's a small sample size, but the things that they have preached and wanted to accomplish in the offseason to better affect their season, as so far, like, just passing with flying colors. And that's, again, has been extremely exciting to see. One of those other things that we knew they had to improve upon was their play against good teams and their play against the division. And so far, a huge win against Detroit, 1-0 in the division, and two extremely tough opponents in Detroit and Washington, who were two of the top teams from a year ago. Those were both big fight feels, and they come away 2-0 in those games. Paul, what have you seen that has allowed them to be 2-0 against good teams, where it was such a struggle for them a season ago?
Yeah, I mean, as we know, against the NFC's best last year, they were 0-6, and there's always a myriad of reasons, right, in the game of football, whether it's a successful play, successful game, doesn't work out. So much that goes into this game. But a big contributor to those issues was the slow starts. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but against Detroit last season, those two games, I think the Packers trailed 34-10 at halftime. The Vikings games were like 41-10, somewhere in that range. They were obviously down 10-0 to the Eagles at halftime in the playoff game. There were slow starts. And when you're going up against those caliber of opponents and you're playing from behind, you're playing catch up, you're in obvious passing situations, as we know, as we saw, not a recipe for success. So, of course, the defense is doing a great job of just stifling the Packers' opponents so far, but the offense has gotten out to quick starts. I mean, they got up 17 points, I believe it was, on the Detroit Lions. They had 14 points in their first 4 possessions against Washington. So that's been a really, really big contributor. And when your offense is able to go and score a touchdown, specifically on their first or second possession of the game, and now you're giving your defense, this caliber of defense, a lead to play with, the upper hand as the game goes on, and you maintain that lead. And now the opposing offense is getting more pass heavy. So you have Micah Parsons, Rashawn Gary, Devontae Wyatt able to just go and get the quarterback more often, be less worried about the run game. Obviously, that's going to be a very advantageous situation for this Packers offense and team to be in. And I'll say this as well. Part of the contributor, again, to those slow starts, especially during the last month of last season, was I'd call it a stagnant passing game, right? Just LaFleur talked about after that Vikings game in week 17, guys just not winning their one-on-one matchups enough, mistimed routes, off routes, drop passes, right? They just couldn't get things going. But through these first 2 games, it's been clear Detroit, Washington have come out and said, we're not going to let Josh Jacobs in the run game get going. And it's been tough sledding, right? They're able to churn out 2, 3, 4, maybe 5-yard carries, but there hasn't been that big burst. There hasn't been, all right, we're going to lean on the run game. So again, that puts more of the responsibility of moving the ball on the offense. And overall, passing game has responded well. Again, they've been a big part of that element, has been a big part of generating those early leads. So again, I think it's obviously 2-0 is great. Being 2-0 against these opponents is obviously very, very good. But how the Packers are doing it think is obviously really important as well, because so many of the things that tripped them up a year ago against these caliber teams, they've been able to overcome.
Did some quick math while you were going through that, because you mentioned you didn't have the exact numbers. I now do. I am stunned by this, actually. And I sort of, we knew it, right? But like, okay, Minnesota Vikings in the first game, they're down 28-0. Detroit Lions in the first game, they're down 24-3. Lions in the second game, they're down 17-7. Vikings in the second game against Minnesota, they're down 20-3. Eagles in the NFC Championship game, they're down 16-3. Those 5 games combined, that's a combined score of, they're down 105-16 in those 105-16 in those 5 games. I mean, like, I knew it was bad, but like, you're losing by 90 points in those 5 games combined to start those games. I mean, it's remarkable that any of them were even remotely close by the end of it, which is saying something as well. But like, that's how bad it was last year. 105-16, a differential to open those games. So yeah, I would say getting off to a strong start, definitely something we knew was bad. I don't even know if I knew it was quite as bad as it actually was. In hindsight, it looks insane, but definitely something this year that, like you've said, they've made a conscientious effort towards. And I mean, just it makes such an insane difference when you're the one that gets the lead. Not only are you not having to play from behind, but now you can dictate defensively, and the other team is more likely to pass the ball, and they're not going to stick with the run as much. You just have so many things working in your favor in those situations, and we've seen the script entirely flipped in these 2 games so far, and it's paid off huge for Green Bay.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, when you're trailing, or we've heard LaFleur talk about this as before as well, when there's penalties or you can't get the run game going, and all of a sudden you're living in this world of 2nd and 9s, 3rd and 12s, like that is a real, even for a talented offense, litany of pass catchers, Jordan Love is your quarterback, like that is a very, very difficult life to live in the NFL when you're constantly in those long down and distance situations, because defenses know you're going to pass the ball, right? On 3rd and 12, there's only so many routes you can run to get you past the sticks. The defensive front can pin its ears back to get after the quarterback. And you're able to, again, a talented offense can overcome that at times. But in terms of consistently moving the ball over the course of 4 quarters, you're just not going to find that consistency when you're living in that world, or you're playing catch up through an entire game. So then that gets the offense off of their game plan. Like I said, you become more one-dimensional and pass heavy. So there is just a massive, massive trickle-down effect that comes with having a slow start, falling behind early. But on the flip side, when you're the Packers, like these first 2 games, and you're the one jumping out to the lead, now it's the opponent who has to overcome all that.
What's going on, everybody? It is time to get our sleeper picks in for week 3. I can't believe it's week 3 already. Week 2 is in the books, and we've got Thursday Night Football. And let's be real, this is the perfect type of game to get your sleeper picks in for. It's one of the best teams in football in Buffalo versus one of the worst teams in football in Miami. And that's why it makes it a little bit more fun to have those sleeper picks on the side. I'm going to make this one super easy. I expect Buffalo to win big. Because they're winning big, I'm expecting that Buffalo is going to be able to run the football. Because they're down big, I'm expecting Miami's going to have to throw their way back into this one, or at least try to. For that reason, from Miami's standpoint, Javon Bullard, 30.5 receiving yards. I think he's going to have to be a big part of this receiving offense. And I think you could see a variety of checkdowns to him, which allow him to get more than 30.5 receiving yards. Tyreek Hill, a lot of garbage time yardage. Buffalo up big. They try to get Tyreek Hill involved. He's still going to want the football. He's still going to want to get his yards. So I'm going more than 68.5 receiving yards for Tyreek Hill. And then last but not least, James Cook, 64.5 rushing yards. There should be ample opportunity for Buffalo to run the football in this one. And I like James Cook's odds of getting more than 64.5 rushing yards in this particular game. So to recap, Javon Bullard, more than 30.5 receiving yards. Tyreek Hill, more than 68.5 receiving yards. And James Cook, more than 64.5 rushing yards. Of course, make sure to get those picks in over on Sleeper. Terms and conditions apply. So make sure to check out those conditions over on Sleeper as well. The link is in the description below. And remember that you can get a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code Packaday. Again, a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code Packaday. What are you waiting for? Get after it right now. Chess is the insolvable game. When you're down to 7 pieces left on the board, the computer engines can now solve every possible scenario once you're down to 7 pieces. When you're in 3rd and long, it's like defensive coordinators have now solved it, right? Like there's, like you said, there's only so many outcomes that are possibly there, and you still have to go and execute, of course, and you can have penalties and things like that, but it makes it so much easier to know the handful of things only that could come in that situation. The name of the game is predictability. And when you are up and the other team knows that they're going to pass, you know that they're going to pass, it makes them so much more one-dimensional, so much more predictable, and so much easier on your defense. And then obviously vice versa. If you have to become predictable and the other team knows exactly what you're doing, makes it so hard on your offensive line, your quarterback, your play caller, etc. So getting out to those early leads, or at minimum not being down 105-16 in big games, certainly has its advantages, and we've seen that so far. And speaking of the defense, as we've kind of been getting into, you, I know, wrote about Keshan Nixon. He had the desire to be Green Bay's number one corner. There's a lot of hesitation and trepidation in Packers Nation about that potentially being the case. I thought arguably that was the best game that he's played, at least defensively. He's had some pretty epic special teams moments in Green Bay, but defensively, I thought that was as good, if not better, than he's ever played. What did you see from Keshan Nixon in his quest to become the true Packers number one corner?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the tape speaks for itself. The numbers: 6 targets, 5 pass breakups. I saw NFL Next Gen stats on plays where Keshan Nixon was targeted. The average separation from him and the receiver was 1 yard. I mean, he was all over those Washington receivers, hence the ball production, right? The 5 pass breakups. But whatever role Keshan Nixon has been asked to fill during his time with the Packers, that's a flyer on the punt coverage unit when he first arrived. All-pro return man twice. Starter as a nickel defender. Like, he has answered the bell every single time, every single role that the Packers have given him. And so far, again, it's early, but even last season, right, he was very, very good a year ago at limiting pass catchers. He held pass catchers to under 10 yards per catch. And as an outside cornerback, if you're doing that, that's really, really good. Jeff Hafley has praised him for his man coverage abilities, change directions, and just the physicality he brings to the cornerback position. And we just talked about, right, the comfort within the defensive scheme overall. I think with Keshan Nixon now, in year 2, there's just comfort in being the outside cornerback, right? Not just roles and responsibilities, but like your technique, the fundamentals that come with playing this position. Because again, he was a nickel cornerback. The 2024 offseason, that's what he was preparing to be. 4 weeks into the 2024 NFL season, that's where he was primarily playing. Or I think it was week 4 when they finally moved him to outside, and that's kind of where he started to see most of his playing time come. So he's had a full year in the Hafley defense, a full off season in preparation for, all right, I'm going to be an outside cornerback for this Packers team. And so I think we're seeing the culmination of all of that come together as well. The comfort, the confidence, not that Keshan Nixon's ever been lacking confidence, but
true.
I think we're seeing on the field all of that come together. And again, really, really good pass rush obviously helps. Jeff Hafley's scheme plays a role for everyone in this as well. But Keshan Nixon, credit to him, because like I said at the start of this, signed as a free agent with the Packers in 2022, was a special teams guy, not even a returner right away, right? That's what we remember, but he was the flyer. He was the punt coverage, one of the punt coverage guys, and excelled at that role really well. Wherever they have put him, he has found a way to succeed. And again, to what level that success comes as a full-time starting outside cornerback, that still has to be determined. But he's shown us up to this point that he can find success in whatever area the Packers need him to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think the interesting thing is that if you look at his athletic profile and you would just say like, hey, what position does he fit best at? He looks way better as an outside corner than as a slot corner. He didn't have the high end agility scores, which usually you need kind of those oily hips and the ability to kind of turn on a dime, because you just get those two-way goes and players being able to go in a multitude of directions on you. And I think there were some struggles just because maybe it wasn't the perfect fit. And to his credit, he just battled and tried to do the best that he could in that situation, no matter what. But as soon as he gets to outside corner, to me, he just looks like a totally different player. And that straight line speed, that competitiveness, it just plays a whole heck of a lot better on the outside. Doesn't have to be quite as oily, and doesn't, that change of direction isn't quite as much of an issue. And now we're seeing him play at a much higher level. I mean, that's an epic performance to just get tested that many times, to just come up with pass breakup after pass breakup. Some of those not easy too. The receiver on the one gets his hands fully on the ball and just kind of punches it out at the end. Like It's really, really impressive. And again, like you're saying, for a guy who signed on a 1-year vet minimum, $0 signing bonus deal, to go from that to now where he's at has been really, really impressive, and is just another really kind of remarkable Goody find out of completely nowhere to now being at least at minimum in that conversation for the number one corner on the Green Bay Packers. Another defensive back I wanted to pick your brain on was Javon Bullard, who has had, I think, a really fun start to this season. And I think in week 2, I know week 1, some of the coverage stuff, he got caught. Obviously the one was like an Amon-Ra St. Brown one-on-one in man coverage. That's like, good luck in that situation. It's not exactly where you want him. That's not how you're going to draw it up. Sometimes you have to call some different stuff on defense just to kind of call it a change of pace, so you're not running the same zone defense time after time. But I mean, outside of that, he has been flying to the football. And man, does it just look like every time he's on the field, he just wants to hit somebody really, really hard. And I really, really appreciate that about him.
Yeah, you mentioned at the start of this, the defense as a whole looks like they just know what's coming, right? And I think Bullard in particular, he absolutely looks like that. I mean, on the stat sheet, the box score at the end of the games, I don't know that anything's going to leap off, but when we got that all 22 view as the game's unfolding, and then afterward, I mean, you see someone who is all over the field. You see someone who's playing extremely fast, breaking on the football, again, like he knows exactly what's coming. And this Packers safety room, I mean, goodness, we know what Xavier McKinney can do, but Bullard, the way he's playing, Evan Williams, the way he's playing, I mean, the communication, we talked about the rotation within the defense. I mean, the level that he's executing that at right now, the communication component of it, this Packers safety room is loaded and playing at a really, really high level. And to reference the year 2 leaps with both Bullard and Williams, it feels like we're seeing that, it's only 2 games again, but we're seeing that in live action taking place. I feel like a lot of times it can be reflective, right? You look back and you go, oh, they made that jump. We saw it. But this feels like in the moment we are seeing faster, physical ball production, just everything that you want to see from the safety position.
Yeah, I'm right there. I've said for a while now, I think the talk of Javon Bullard being a bust, or that he's not going to be able to play, or that I haven't seen it. I think he's a really good football player. I think he plays the game the right way. I think there's some deficiency in coverage where, again, you probably don't want him manned up in the slot. Amon-Ra St. Brown, spoiler alert, not many people do very well manned up on Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, but I think there's a couple things there where maybe you help him out, maybe put Nate Hobbs in some of the more obvious passing situations. But the way that he attacks those wide receiver screens and in the backfield, and is just, again, throwing his body around and making plays, I just love the way that he plays football. And to me, he's been a very much a value add for Green Bay on defense so far this year. Let's flip it around to the offensive side of the ball. I want to talk to you first of all about the offensive linemen who have had to fill in specifically for Zach Thomas, specifically Anthony Belton, making his first start right tackle, 2nd round pick. What were your impressions of Anthony Belton and how this offensive line was able to just kind of go about their day with him at the starting right tackle spot?
Yeah, I thought overall the operation against Washington was really sound from the offensive line for the most part. Jordan Love had the time he needed, clean pocket, time to operate within the rhythm of the play, go through his progression. So I thought Belton held up well. Mentioned the running game. Again, I think Jacobs is averaging under 4 yards per carry on the season so far. But like I said, I attribute that more to defense is coming out and just saying, hey, we're not going to let Josh Jacobs get going, right? Like, that's going to be tough sledding for a lot of offensive lines when you're facing that many defenders in the box. And on the flip side, created a lot of downfield opportunities for Jordan Love to try to take advantage of against Washington. So I think the offensive line has performed well. Matt LaFleur was very complimentary on Monday of Anthony Belton's performance against Washington. And I think what also speaks to that is the rotation that was happening early on with him and Darian Kinnard stopped, right, as the game progressed. And we've seen with this Packers offensive line unit and how they handle those rotations, like they are obviously more than willing to let a rotation go out through a whole game. They are obviously very willing to let it go out for multiple weeks to figure out who's the best player. If both players are playing well, saying, hey, we got to get both of these guys on the field in some capacity. So I think the fact that Belton kind of sees control of, all right, you're the right tackle for the second half, I think speaks to in game what the Packers were seeing from him from a performance to say, all right, he's handling it. He's going to be our guy for the rest of this game.
Yeah, there was a play where Kinnard on a run play went in completely the wrong direction. And I don't know, I'm sure some of that maybe played a little bit of a part too, of like maybe Kinnard just doesn't have the offense down quite as much, but I still think it speaks volumes, the fact that they're just like, nope, Belton is going to be the guy for the remainder of the game, made that decision in game. I would assume if Zach Tom can't go this week, that it's probably going to be Belton, maybe getting that full workload at right tackle this week. That'll be interesting to keep an eye. Hopefully, especially with Myles Garrett out there, that Zach Tom is able to go. But if he's not, I feel a little bit better knowing that Green Bay didn't have to change their offense in any sort of real significant way, could go out and run their stuff. And Anthony Belton, besides an unfortunate big holding penalty on that play to Jaden Reed, thought for the most part did a good job holding up. And again, didn't have to change the offense in any sort of significant way. Speaking of Jaden Reed, unfortunate not only to not get the touchdown on that play because of the penalty by Belton, but more unfortunate that he breaks his collarbone on the play. Going to miss probably around 6 to 8 weeks. Could be a little bit more. We'll have to wait and see. But thoughts on how Green Bay can kind of go about replacing Jaden Reed?
Yeah, I mean, after the game, Jordan Love, he summed it up well. I mean, it feels like almost every time the ball gets in Jaden Reed's hands, it can be downfield, in the backfield, a short area throw. Like, there's a lot of times where big plays often come when Jaden Reed has the ball in his hands. So that presence is, of course, going to be missed. But as we know, Packers have a deep wide receiver room. And when it comes to doing their best to, I guess, replace his absence, for lack of a better term, for this time being, it's going to be a group effort, as it always is with this Packers team. But one player in particular who I'm looking at is going to be Matthew Golden. Again, we're going to see Golden moved around just like we did with Jaden Reed. But in terms of kind of that primary slot role, I could see Golden filling that when it comes to, and we saw this in the Washington game too, some of that pre-snap motion, maybe getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Golden got an opportunity in there. Savion Williams. We saw Dontavian Wicks being used as the motion man as well to get a free release off the line of scrimmage. So it's going to be a group effort, as we know. That's just how the Packers operate at the receiver position. But I think for, again, a lot of those responsibilities, the slot, the yak, the motion, I think Golden obviously kind of can fit into that role and maybe shoulder more of it than some of the other receivers would.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, you don't want to lose anyone, certainly the caliber of Jaden Reed, but if there's one position where they have the bodies to potentially make that work still, I think it is at wide receiver. And meanwhile, Christian Watson seems to be on a mission from God to get back to the football field as soon as humanly possible. Sounds like there's a lot of good news from Christian. I know he spoke to the media the other day, but seems like he's very confident that this is going to be something where he's going to be back pretty soon here.
Yeah, so he's first eligible to return to practice in week 6, right? Because he has to stay on the PUP list for 4 weeks. Packers have their bye week, so he can be back practicing as soon as week 6 when the Packers are getting ready to play the Bengals. At that point, the 21-day window opens up for the Packers to add him back to the 53-man roster. So there's going to be a ramp-up period, right? Just if he's back for week 6 practices, we might not see him still until week 8 or week 9 on the football field as part of a ramp up. But he said on Monday that, he feels that he's checked all of the boxes up to this point, right? Other than being on the practice field, getting the live reps. He talked about just kind of the reactionary stuff that obviously comes with playing the game of football. So that stuff still has to come, but sounds like he's in a very, very good spot with his rehab. And one of the other things he said, he just wants to make sure that when the time comes that he's able to be back out there on the football field, that he wants to be 100% Christian Watson. So he knows. So at that point, right, the injury can be behind him. There isn't, any sort of wondering or anything like that. Get back to 100%, make sure he's a full go, hit the practice field, and then start returning from that point.
Someday somebody's going to make so much money in preventative measures for ACL and MCL injuries and stuff like that. But it's already remarkable at how quickly these players can get back to, where they were at coming off a pretty catastrophic injury. I mean, that injury happened last year and you're just like, man, yeah, I mean, it might be like December when he gets back and maybe even middle or end of December. And now he's back and it looks already in incredible shape. So very exciting to potentially get him back in this offense, and already dreaming, Paul, of Christian Watson, Jaden Reed once he gets back, Matthew Golden, Tucker Kraft, Josh Jacobs, group of 5 out there. That seems like it could be a very potent weapon group for Jordan Love and this offense. Before we get you out of here, Packers Browns coming up on Sunday, first road game of the year. 0-2 Cleveland, not necessarily expected to put up a huge fight in this one, but you never quite know. What are you looking for in this game?
I mean, I don't always want to just state the obvious, but this is a don't let Myles Garrett wreck everything kind of game, right? I mean, that's, to me, that, and I'm sure many, that's what this comes down to in handling, his pass rush abilities led the NFL in pressures last season. He has the most sacks in the NFL right now through 2 games. I mean, LaFleur said it best. He's a game wrecker. And so just limiting, he's one of those players where you're never going to truly stop him, right? But it's just limiting him so he doesn't absolutely take the game over. And of course, watching the injuries from the Packers perspective throughout the week, specifically right tackle with Zach Tom, LaFleur said they're, again, just like last week, they're just going to have to see how the week goes and progresses with Tom. But, just like I think Washington had a rookie offensive lineman starting last week. And then, Packers obviously found some opportunities for Micah Parsons. One would think that if Anthony Belton's out there at right tackle for the Green Bay Packers, Cleveland Browns are going to be looking for ways to get Myles Garrett matched up on him as well. So Packers just having answers as best they can to that equation.
Thankfully, Green Bay's had some experience going against Aiden Hutchinson already this year, which I still think Myles Garrett is a supercharged version of Aiden Hutchinson, which is no disrespect towards Aiden Hutchinson. I think he's phenomenal, but they've had some experience in trying to take out one, all pro caliber defensive end already, and they've had some success with it. Granted, Zach Tom was out there for that particular game. He may or may not be for this game, but they do have some experience. It worked pretty well in that game. So hopefully they can kind of copy and paste a similar sort of game plan to make sure that Myles Garrett does not get going to any real way. It's 3 things for me. Myles Garrett's the one. The 2 is, no big turnover. Like turnovers, of course, are like every single week. It goes without saying. But if you just are even in the turnover battle, Green Bay wins this 95 times out of 100. So I just, if all of a sudden it's -1, -2, that completely changes, where this game could potentially go. And then the other one is, no big catastrophic special teams plays too. Again, on offense, defense, I feel like Green Bay just straight up better than both of those units that Cleveland has. But if Cleveland gets a big kick return, punt return, something like that, again, that can change things pretty quick and just give Cleveland some points that were maybe not expected. And that can certainly change the outcome quite a bit as well. So those are the big 3 for me. Should be a fun matchup. Paul, I cannot thank you enough for all of your insights every single week. You cover it like nobody else here. Locker room stuff that you're gathering all this wonderful information on is absolutely epic. I know we can find it over at the Wisconsin State Journal, but tell us where we can find all of your incredible work.
Yeah, Wisconsin State Journal. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Bretl, and then at ESPN Lacrosse, Sports Lead, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m.
Awesome. Well, again, appreciate you a ton. We will talk again next week, hopefully when the Packers are 3-0 and heading into a Micah Parsons and I guess kind of Kenny Clark revenge game. So that should be a fun one to talk about. We'll do it again next week. For him, he is at Paul_Bretl. For me, you can find me at Andy Herman NFL. That's going to do it for us today. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.